Hey, friends, this is Mike Vogt from Transform South Sudan. I wanted to send you just a short update in the month of November here, as I've just returned from South Sudan a few days ago, and I wanted to give you an update on some of the things that I and the team experienced in South Sudan. Just a quickie photo of the group that went to Vietnam, South Sudan. There was 7 of us that flew from Nashville, Tennessee to be part of the work that's happening in South Sudan, and it was great to be on the ground once again. This was my 14th trip to the region, and for 5 of the 7 people on your screen, this was their first trip. So it was great to experience this with some first timers. The most ambitious project that we are supporting in Vietnam at this time is the HIC Women's Clinic. You might recall that this clinic was created to help alleviate some of the unnecessary suffering that's occurring in the area as the health indicators in South Sudan are just dire. And it is really the women and the children that have suffered the most from the absence of medical care and available medical facilities in this region. So much of the time spent on this trip was at the clinic. You're familiar, I'm sure, with the story of Dr. Angelo. And we were able to bring Dr. Shannon Madison, who's an OBGYN here in Nashville. She was able to make a significant investment of time with Dr. Angelo when we were on the ground at the clinic this week. It was an awesome time at the clinic, and I will just share with you a little bit of the unprecedented growth of the clinic. January, February, March, first quarter of 2023, we were averaging about 167 patients a month at the clinic. 6 months later, in the third quarter of 2023, we were up to about 215 patients per month at the clinic. First quarter this year, we were up to 284 patients per month on average. And the quarter that just finished, third quarter of this year, we were up to 523 patients per month was our average. I will tell you, in the week that we were in Vietnam, South Sudan, we processed over 100 patients a day at the clinic. So I anticipate this bar graph to continue moving up in hockey stick fashion. The clinic is exceedingly busy, which is a great thing, but it's also causing us some challenges, as I'm sure you would appreciate as well. Just a quick image. This was the picture of the waiting room or the lobby area at the HIC Women's Clinic. These are people that are waiting to be able to see the doctors and the nurses on site. We had roughly 40 people at any given time in the lobby. And then just outside the door of the lobby to the right, there was a whole bunch of people that were waiting under the shade of a large tree to be able to get their spot in the lobby. So again, really, really busy. We were turning patients away every day because we just didn't have enough time to see everyone. They were kind of processed based on their level of need. The most dire ones, of course, were moved kind of to the front of the line, and people that could be pushed off to tomorrow, unfortunately, were asked to come back tomorrow. But this is how busy we were at the clinic. Um, at the women's clinic, I'm sure you've heard the story before, but one of the reasons why it was created was to address the infant mortality rate, the maternal mortality rate that we have in South Sudan. Literally, if you are a female for a period of time, the leading cause of death, if you were a female, was complications related to giving life. And if you Google maternal mortality rates across the planet, what you'll discover is South Sudan literally has the highest maternal mortality rate in the world. It is a very sad reality that so many expectant mothers give their lives due to complications related to childbearing. But I am pleased to report to you that at the clinic, we are making a difference. We're making an impact on this very sad statistic. I couldn't possibly fill my screen with all the babies that have been born in 2024, but the mothers are giving birth into skilled care. We are having skilled delivery here at the clinic now, based on the improvements that we've made this year. And there are so many babies that are being born into the hands of doctor and nurse and midwives at the clinic. It's just a joy. Many of these births are uncomplicated. There's no issues. But of course, when there is issues, it's when you're really, really grateful that you've got a medical professional on hand to intervene should complications be part of the birth of the child. And I'm pleased to report that this last week we had two births that happened at the clinic while we were there. In fact, one of them had some complications, which I'll tell you a story about in just a little bit. But great to see with my own eyes the skilled care that's being given to mothers on the big day that baby arrives. Quick story as well. One of the challenges we're facing at the clinic right now is that we don't have a blood bank. Don't have the ability to store blood at this time. We don't have the right mechanism to do so. But sometimes we need to be able to do life-saving blood transfusions. The reason for that is that malaria is so prevalent, and malaria, when it's in a prolonged state, causes a very high fever, which causes the blood to become anemic. And what you're seeing on the screen here are two infants who are both severely anemic. And it was a joy for myself to be able to literally donate blood to do a transfusion for this little one here on the left. This is a little girl who had a low hemoglobin, and I was able to give my blood to this little one to help save her life. And Heather Carty here on the right, one of our team members, had the right blood type for this infant on the screen here. This is a little boy who had a hemoglobin of 2.3. And Dr. Angelo said it was unlikely that this little one was going to survive the night unless he got a life-saving blood transfusion. And Heather was a positive match for the blood type for this little one. And so she was able to give blood to save this little one's life. There's been something like 24 life-saving blood transfusions at the clinic so far this year, which has been awesome. But man, we'd sure like to set ourselves up so that we don't have to have an all-hands-on-deck scenario to try to find a donor in the moment that we need a blood transfusion. We definitely want to be able to figure out how to get a blood bank in place in short order. One more story, and then I will talk a little bit about the biggest needs for the end of the year and the start of next year. On one of the afternoons, I was at the clinic and I saw this little one on the screen here hooked up to an oxygen generator you can see in the background. And I saw this little one's chest contracting in a really strange and unusual way. You know what it looks like when your chest breathes. It's a very smooth, sort of rhythmic up and down motion. And this baby's chest was contracting rather violently. And I asked Angelo what was going on. And he said this little one has a pretty significant case of pneumonia. And there's so much fluid in this one's lungs that they've stopped functioning properly. And the violent contracting I was seeing of this one's chest was the intercostal muscles forcing the lungs to do their job with muscle contractions. I couldn't believe it. And so the muscles were trying to squeeze the lungs to get the lungs to work. And then this one was hooked up to the oxygen generator to try to get sufficient oxygen to be able to breathe. Well, why this was a sad story for me is one of the moms that gave birth in Vietnam last week had postpartum hemorrhage in the room across the hall from where the patient ward was. And she bled so much that she passed out on the bed and then fell off the bed onto the floor. Well, Dr. Shannon called for the oxygen so that we could revive the mother. And sadly, we only have one oxygen generator. So this little infant on the screen had to be unplugged from the source of oxygen that was helping to keep him alive because it had to be used to revive the mother that was experiencing hemorrhage and had passed out across the hallway. And I was just distraught watching this because this little one needed the oxygen too. But because there's only one generator, we had to make a decision, or the doctor had to make a decision of who needs it the most in this moment. And those are the sad realities. Those are the decisions that need to be made at the clinic in ongoing fashion at this time. Let me tell you a little bit about what we're trying to get in place so that we can come into 2025 ready for what next year is going to be needing from us. We are currently at 21 medical staff at the clinic. We know by the end of next year, we're going to need to be at 30. So we are needing to raise money to bring in additional medical staff to be able to meet the rising demand that we're experiencing. Again, we had 100 patients a day last week while we were at the clinic. We know we're going to need to add more staff to be able to meet the demand that we're going to be stepping into for the coming year. More patients means more medical staff, means more medicines and consumables. And so, of course, our budget has grown for the consumables as well. Our model at the clinic financially is that we ask the patients who are financially able to at least meet the cost of covering their medicines. But South Sudan is a very, or Vietnam, South Sudan is a very rural area where 80% of the population there lives on something like $1.20 a day. So most people can't even afford the medicines that they need to be prescribed to fix their situation. So our reality is that most of the cost, in fact, the lion's share of the cost of this clinic is really carried by the backs of Western donors who choose to extend some generosity from the provision that's in their hands right now. In addition to more medical workers and more medicines and soft supplies, consumables, we also want to make some very, very basic improvements to the facility terms of equipment. We need to bring in a blood bank to be able to have a community program whereby people are giving blood. So it's already in the cooler, it's being stored, and we can match it up to whoever needs it for a blood transfusion. So it's not an all hands on deck scenario when someone needs a life-saving transfusion. We want to get at least 3 more oxygen generators so that we don't have to decide who gets the oxygen, who needs it the most. If someone needs oxygen, they need oxygen. And we'd love to go from 1 oxygen generator to 4 by adding 3 more. And additional things on this list, we want to be able to get in like a radiant warmer so that if a newborn is born prematurely and they have to be underneath the source of heat, even though it's crazy hot in South Sudan and I sweat profusely when I'm there, the babies who are just born are cold and they need to be kept warm and beyond what, of course, blankets can do. So we've got a few things we need to get in place from an equipment standpoint. And then lastly, there's the facility. It's crazy to think about this. This clinic has only been functioning for 2 years, but we've already outgrown our primary patient ward, and we need to do some more improvements to the facility by adding a couple of additional basic structures next year so that we can continue to meet the growing demand at the clinic. This is a basic snapshot of what we're trying to do next year. As you can see here, we've got 21 medical workers on the team. This shows you how much they're paid per month and what that equals to yearly. It's crazy to think that 21 medical workers only results in about $152,000 of annual salary, but it's pretty affordable to add skilled staff over there. We need to add 9 more people to our team next year to be able to meet the total demand for 2025. We want to do some improvements to the facilities. We're looking for some more equipment. There's basic operating expenses. And then, of course, there's a bit of a wish list of other things we'd like to do, which includes adding an ambulance. If God allows the means, we'd love to add an operating theater so we can do things like cesarean sections and appendectomies and so forth. So this is a bit of a glimpse of what we're trying to raise in total for next year. We need to have a budget of about $728,000 to be able to do everything on our wish list. The way you can give, if you choose to partner with us again financially, is through our website. You go to transformsouthsudan.org. That name might seem unfamiliar to you. It's because we were originally formed as Solidarity Ministries Africa for Reconciliation and Development. You can see it up here on the green banner. We found that some of our supporters couldn't remember our name, and so we rebranded last year, or earlier this year rather, to be Transform South Sudan. It's our DBA name, but we are still the same organization, and we would love it if you consider making us a part of your year-end charitable giving. If you'd be willing to consider making a donation to our ministry, to our 501c3 by the end of this year. All your donations, of course, are fully tax deductible. And if you go to the donations page of the website, you'll see that there's other ways you can give as well, which include gifts of appreciated stock. You can give through a donor advised fund if that's your preferred way of giving. But we would be grateful if you would consider partnering with us again financially in your giving for the end of this year. Our needs are significant and we desperately need your help. So would you consider including us in your year-end charitable giving? Thanks for hearing this update. Talk to you soon.